Hey, what's going on guys? This is Jake at That Fit Friend, and today I'll be reviewing the Flux Footwear Adapt Runner. So 3 pros that I have with the Adapt Runner is number 1, I see these as a pretty good generalist shoe for some recreational running and then some gym sessions here and there. Now, I would say don't lift heavy in this shoe, but if you want a running shoe that can also transcend into some bodyweight workouts and some light strength training, this model can work. And now in the context of running, I've really enjoyed this shoe for like my more short and mid-range runs. So anywhere from like 2 to 5-ish miles, I found this model to be exceptional regarding its overall pop with the midsole, its responsiveness, and its overall comfort and feel. So I think if you're somebody who wants a very generalist running shoe and you're not necessarily doing marathons or you don't need something that's focused only on speed, the Flux Adapt Runner can be a decent option to explore. The second pro that I have with this shoe is the wider toe box. So I think if you're somebody that does want a wider toe box running shoe and you're kind of tired of Ultra shoes and how fast they can break down at times, sorry Ultra, but my Lone Peak 7s broke pretty dang quick when I wore them, this can be a decent option. The toe box of this shoe is pretty wide, and because you have a knit upper, you also get a little bit more upper volume and stretch in the upper of the shoe, so it gives it a slightly wider fit. So I think if you're somebody who's constantly battling toe boxes in your running shoes, this could be a good option to explore. The third pro that I have with this shoe is I like the zero drop construction and the Adapt insole. So with this model, you get this removable insole and it is a little bit more bumpy. And so this does take a little bit of time to get used to. And to be honest, when I first put this shoe on and the other Adapt models, I actually wasn't a fan of this, but it's since grown on me and I do find it to be pretty comfortable. And I also think if you're somebody that wants that zero drop shoe, this can be a really viable option because with this model, you do have a zero drop construction. So if you like a flatter foot position, that could be a good thing. And now to add to this, if you do want that running shoe for walking around and just wearing for daily wear, that's also where I think the shoe can excel with its zero drop construction, its wider toe box, and its overall comfortable knit upper. But now let's talk about a few cons that I have with the Adapt Runner. So 3 cons that I have with the Adapt Runner is number 1, I think if you're somebody that likes a little bit more structure to your midsole, this shoe can be problematic through the medial midfoot. So here at the medial midfoot, you do have a divot in the construction. And so if you are constantly having your foot roll in, or if that's something you constantly battle with your running mechanics, that might be something to consider with this shoe. I find them to be okay for my forefoot running, but I do notice when I start to get tired, I'll start to have this collapse in a little bit. And if that's something you also struggle with your running mechanics or just something that bothers you in regard to how you run and how certain shoes interact with your foot, that would definitely be something to consider with this shoe. The second con that I have with this model is I like the Adapt knit for the most part on the upper. It's very lightweight, very breathable, and it hugs the foot very well. However, I was noticing that I was sliding around a little bit in the upper of the shoe, and you can have some spillover issues. So if you are going to use this shoe outside of running for working out, you might not want to do a ton of lateral work in it because this knit just doesn't have enough reinforcement to really lock that foot down over the sole. So you might have a little bit more spillover in this shoe. And so that said, if you like more structured upper constructions to really lock your foot down when you are running or with your running shoes, that would definitely be a concern I would have with this model for your contextual needs. The third con that I have with this model is the boot's not the most structured as well. So you have this lip in the boot, and if you like a little bit more of a cup to lock your foot down when you're running and training, that would definitely be something to consider with the shoe. You have a booty style construction, which is great for feasibility of getting the shoe on and off easily. However, with booty style constructions, especially constructions like this that have very lightweight boots, you might find that your heel is moving around in the shoe. So if the shoe, for example, is too wide for your foot anatomy, I'm not convinced you're going to be able to get it tight enough with this lighter knit upper and the boot to really lock your foot down without a little bit more movement. So just a little bit of food for thought there before investing in the Adapt Runner. Overall, it's a good generalist shoe, but there are definitely elements of the shoe that I think might have it falling short for certain running shoe asks and athletes. So to chat on the performance of the Flux Adapt Runner, I'll break this section into a few different parts. I'll talk about the shoe's performance for cross training and more versatile training, short and mid-range runs, and then also daily wear and walking. In the context of cross training and lifting, I think this shoe will work for like track workouts. So anything where you're going to be doing some kettlebell work, some lighter dumbbell work, and some body weight work, this shoe should be fine. The midsole is stable enough to support some lighter strength training. So I think, for example, if I had to give you a weight with a barbell deadlift that you could do technically in this shoe, I would say probably cap around like 185, 225, and that's because you have a ton of toe spring, a bigger stack height, and the midsole is going to start to compress as you load them heavier. But that said, I would not suggest doing barbell work in this shoe, but if you did have a weight threshold, that's what I would work off of. This shoe is definitely going to be a little bit better for like body weight and lighter strength context where you're blending a little bit of that style of training with your running. So if you're doing a couple laps around the track and then you do some body weight squats, lunges, or any form of like kettlebell swing, this shoe should be fine for your needs. When it comes to short runs and mid-range runs, so these are runs that range from like 1 to 5-ish miles. Do note, I'm not your marathon guy. I'm not gonna talk to this shoe's performance for like 7+ mile runs, but for like 1 to 5 miles, the shoe has done a pretty good job. Now, what I would suggest is that if you're a forefoot runner, this model I think is gonna feel the best for you. That's where I think you're gonna get the most pop out of the shoe. And I think if you are more of a heel striker or a midfoot striker, that's where this could be a little bit more problematic with that break in this midsole that I mentioned in my con section. Because for example, when I get a little bit more tired with my running, I start heel striking a little bit more, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. However, I did notice I was starting to roll in a little bit more in this model, and that's also due to the lighter weight upper. So all that said, this model should work really well for short runs. So if you're doing slower or medium paced short runs or doing pickups or any form of like hill work, this model should work. My only gripes with this shoe for running is number one, again, this medial support, and then number two, the upper construction. If you're somebody that likes a little bit more beef in your midsole and a little bit more arch or a little bit more midfoot support, and you like a bit more structure in the upper of your shoe for your running needs, that would be a case where you might want to pass on this shoe. Now, in the context of daily wear and walking, I do like this model for the most part. It's pretty dang comfortable, and with that wider toe box and with this knit upper that hugs the foot pretty well, it is pretty comfortable. And I think if you're wanting that shoe that you can wear for errands or be on your feet all day, so for example, if you're working retail and whatnot, and you want a shoe that you can just easily slip on and off, that's gonna breathe well, it's gonna give you some decent comfort and some good grip with this Adapt rubber outsole, I think that's where this shoe will excel. Now, I will say, if you're somebody with a very narrow foot, you might not wanna buy this shoe for daily wear and walking because you might not get the boot security you need in the shoe, and with its width, you might find that it's just a little bit too wide for your needs. But overall, I've liked the Adapt Runner. There are definitely areas where I think it could be improved a little bit, but for the most part, I think it's a pretty strong generalist shoe for both light cross-training and versatile training and short to mid-range runs. When it comes to the price of the Flux Adapt Runner, you can expect to pay $139.99 USD. Now, is that price fair for this shoe? I'm honestly hit or miss on that, and what I would suggest doing, because you can find codes in most places for this model, is looking around for athlete codes that should take off anywhere from like 10 to 15% on this model. And so I think if you can get them for like 120, 130-ish, that's where I think the price point of this model does line up. But overall, $139.99 USD for this model. All right, so now it's to the question, who should buy the Flux Adapt Runner? So number one, if you're looking for that generalist running shoe that can do a little bit of everything, this can be a good option to explore. It can work for some lighter cross training and versatile training. I find it to be a pretty comfortable shoe for short to mid-range runs, and it can work for some pickup work within there as well. And it's also pretty comfortable for walking in daily wear. The second context is if you're after that zero drop shoe, this could be a good option to explore outside of like Ultra or a true barefoot shoe. So if you do want a little bit more of a stack height and cushion, but you want that zero drop shoe, this could be a good option to explore. And the third context where I think the shoe can make sense is for folks with wider feet. So you do have a wider toe box in this model, and so with my E-width foot, I never ran into sizing issues whatsoever in the shoe. So if you're looking for width in the forefoot of your model, and even to the midfoot a little bit, because with this upper, you do have a little bit more stretch to the fit of the shoe, this can be a good option to explore. Now, who shouldn't buy this model? Number one, if you like a little bit more midsole support regarding your medial midfoot, pass on this shoe. I'm not convinced you'll like this cut right here in the midsole of this model. The second context is if you have narrow feet, you're probably gonna want to pass on this shoe as well. With this knit upper, it's great for breathability and hugging the foot, but it's not the best for really locking down and securing the foot. And so if you have a narrow foot, I think you might be sliding around in this shoe a little bit more than you want. And with this looser boot back here in booty style construction, I don't think you're gonna have the security that you necessarily want for your foot anatomy. The third context is if you're looking for that marathon shoe or that shoe designed specifically for speed work, you might also want to pass on this shoe. Again, it's much more of a generalist in my opinion versus being a very like niche focused running shoe. So when it comes to the sizing and fit of the Flux Adapt Runner, I think most folks should be safe going true to size in this shoe. Now I will say if you have a narrow foot, you might want to go down a half size. And now I will say too that a narrow foot might not necessarily align with this last construction regarding its width, but I think going down half size will at least give you a better chance of having this shoe fit for your foot anatomy. But I think for medium and wide feet, true to size will be a safe call in this model. I have an E-width foot and I never feel limited in this shoe, and I can wear a bunch of different sock thicknesses, which I also really like. So when it comes to the weight weight heel toe drop and insole in the Flux Adapt Runner. For my size 10 model here, I have a weight of around 12.25 ounces. So that is a little bit on the heavier side for running shoes, hence why I also don't love this shoe for like sprint work, for example. The heel to toe drop of this shoe is 0 millimeters, and this model does have a removable insole, so you have this Adapt insole here. It's a little bit more bumpy in texture, and I think this will take some time to get used to for most folks. All right, so now let's cover the construction of the Adapt Runner. So on the upper of this shoe, you have an Adapt knit throughout. So this knit is very stretchy, so every part of the shoe has a good amount of stretch. You do have a little bit of a boot cut back here, but again, it's not super rigid and it collapses pretty easy, speaking to like the lightweight knit upper of this model. And then you do have a bit of a reinforced material around the toe here, but again, it is pretty stretchy and it's not super rigid. Looking at the midsole of the shoe, you have an Adapt foam throughout the midsole. This shoe is once again a 0 drop shoe, so the stack height of the forefoot is the same as the heel. You have a full rubber outsole on this shoe, and it typically lasts a while. Like, this shoe has done a pretty good job with its overall durability regarding abrasion on concrete. And then you also have this cut here with this exposed Adapt foam on the midfoot on the medial side of this shoe. Looking at the midfoot of this model, you have 4 core eyelets that go up with a 5th back here for lace lock, and then you have a booty style construction. So as you can see, we don't have a separate tongue, and you do have this removable Adapt insole. Overall though, that's pretty much the gist of this shoe's construction. It's rather simple in nature, but if you have additional questions on the shoe's construction, drop a comment down below. All right, y'all, that wraps up my review of the Flux Adapt Runner. Overall, it's a pretty good shoe. It's not my favorite running shoe to date, but I think if you are after a 0 drop shoe with a wider toe box that's a little bit more general, that's where the shoe can really excel. If you have additional questions on this model, drop a comment down below or reach out to me personally, whichever you prefer. And as always, y'all, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next one.